Good day, good morning, or good evening. Whatever time of the day you're watching this show, a very warm welcome to the Mike from Newlands show. Who's my special guest? I hear you cry. Well, my guest this morning is Frank Rosen. Frank Rosen has a particular story to tell. It's a fascinating story. It's a story that I'm sure is repeated in many families across the country. And it's a great story. It's a story of somebody who was very, very ill and managed and found a way and looked and researched very carefully how he could best heal himself. And some of the products that he's going to bring on today and we're going to be exposed to, and his story, will hopefully help you decide what to do when offered products that are cannabis-based. But before I get onto that, I'd like to have a little rant, if I may, dear viewers, as has become my tradition on the Mike from Newlands show. I pay taxes, and after I've paid my tax, I have a sum of money left over. Not a lot of money, but I have some. And how I spend that money, dear viewers, is entirely up to me. Now, as it happens, I'm one of the people that do not want to use a government hospital. I don't like government hospitals. My experience with them is not a good one, and I have taken the decision that I am going to join a medical aid. That costs me a little bit of extra money, in fact, quite a bit of money in some cases, but I'm happy to pay it, viewers, because it's my money and I do not want to use a government hospital. Now, inexplicably, the ANC government that we have in power today seems to think differently. They seem to think that we should use their hospitals and their hospitals alone. Now, I don't know if any of you have visited a government hospital recently, and I'm not really referring to the Western Cape, because a report that recently came out by a medical association rated the Western Cape DA-run hospitals as the best in the country by a long shot. Grooterskuur right on top of the list. But let's look at the hospitals in Gauteng and around the rest of the country. Rahima Musa, Charlotte Menexi Hospital, Tembisa Hospital, the famous hospital with the 500 million rand with the skinny shorts, where the poor lady Babita Diakoran was gunned down in front of her daughter in her car after exposing the scam of 330 million. Now, I don't want to be part of that. And we are in a democracy. Now, I understand that. I'm actually delighted we're in a democracy. And it turns out, dear viewers, that the majority of the people in this country want to use a government hospital. They enjoy walking into a hospital that is filthy. They seem to think it's okay for patients to give birth on hospital floors, for babies to die, for doctors not to turn up, for drugs not to be available. Water. Good grief. We've got some hospitals, I think it's Rahima Musa, hasn't had water for the last 4 or 5 days. If it wasn't for the gift of the givers, they probably still wouldn't have water. But that's what people voted for. That is what the majority of the citizens in this country want. And I'm happy with that. I support them. Then they're also happy with the police force that doesn't function properly. They're happy with schools, where it gives us the second worst pass rate in the world. Pupils can't read for meaning in standard 4 and 5. Grade 4 and 5. But that is a democracy, and that's how it works. But Mike, I don't want to be part of that. And the government is now telling me that they are going to now amalgamate my private health care, which I pay for with my money after tax, with a system that they've got that totally is useless. It's a mess. You've got more chance of coming out dead than alive in an ANC-run hospital. I just wanted to clear that air, because it seems to me that we're going into the next election with the government pushing for NHI. Now, if you're going to vote in this government again, please keep that in mind. And I would ask you all of you, that if you vote ANC, just keep in mind there's a lot of us who don't want to use government hospitals. We're not taking your money. The money that I pay into that hospital is my money. In fact, you could argue that the government should phone me up and say, you know what, Mike, thank you. Thank you for not using our government hospitals. That means we've got more money to spend on poor people. So thank you for paying for your own hospital care. But no, not a bit of it. They want me in their system, which is going to kill me with my money. So I would ask you just to give that some thought, dear viewers and voters, when the time comes next year. Because I do not want to, and many of us do not want to be part of this government's healthcare system. It is a mess, it's a disgrace, and it's a damn shame. And I challenge now a Dr. Crisp, who often appears on TV, who is an advocator for national health in our country. This is a man who is very difficult to tie down, and when he's asked a tough question, he gets out of his office, takes his lapel mic off, and walks out. I urge you to go and have a look at the interview on ENCA. There, the producer is one brave lady, and she stood her ground and forced him to return to his chair and answer the tough questions. So I'd like to say, Dr. Crisp, if you're watching this show, or if anybody knows him, please pass my challenge on. I would like him in my studio because I have got some questions that I need some answers to. So that's my little rant over. Now I think I need something to calm me down. So the person I can turn to, knowing that he's got the very products that are going to go deep breath, relax, I either going to smoke it, I'm going to ingest it. I'm going to admit something though. I have no idea what my guest Frank has got in front of him. I don't know about HTC CBD. I understand there's good and there's bad. There's some make you high, some make you don't. So I'm really going to come in on this from where I need to understand better these products. And the reason for that is that Frank, who I've known for a long time, so it's no secret he's a long-standing old friend of mine. I was in a hospital with him the day that he was diagnosed with cancer. I actually remember it very well. It was very emotional, very sad. When I think about it now, it gives me goosebumps. And Frank decided then that things were going to change. He decided he's going to look at another way of overcoming this cancer that he'd been stricken with. And Frank pulled through. The man that you see sitting in this studio has been alive a long time after all the doctors said he had months to live. But Frank did his homework. He changed his diet and his lifestyle, and he's alive here today. And I honestly can't see anybody healthier than my guest across the table from me. So Frank, a very warm welcome to the Mike from Newlands show. It's a pleasure to have you here. So let me start off with this question. There's grass, marijuana, weed, we've got HTC, CDB, BBC, and all the rest of it. Take us through the basics, and where are we in South Africa now with this drug? I'm interested in, first of all, where the health properties come into it, and then also I want to know a little bit about the other properties which I experienced once, which I'll ask you please not to remind my viewers about. But Frank did prove to me that it does affect the size of the moon when you're lying on the field. But let's not go down that road just yet, Frank. Let's talk about your drugs. But first of all, tell us your story.
Well, firstly, I must just correct you there. You're getting your drugs confused with your radio stations. There's no BBC in my range, but we'll leave that for another discussion. It's something that's very obviously close to my heart. I was diagnosed in March 2014 with bladder cancer. I was told I needed an emergency radical cystectomy. They told me I must be in hospital within a week or I could be in serious trouble. This, bear in mind, as you probably well know, I went for an insurance medical, strong as an ox, riding motorbikes all day, every day. I went in on a Wednesday, and the following Thursday I was a cancer patient. I wasn't feeling ill. There was some inherent problem, and this, according to the doctors, necessitated a radical intervention. Being obtuse and obstinate and probably a little bit stupid, I decided, hang on, I'd heard about cannabis curing cancer. And I thought, well, why not investigate that avenue prior to having to go and have operations? As you well know, you fetched me from the hospital. It was an incredibly emotional time. The reason you fetched me from the hospital, my wife was overseas. I couldn't talk to her because it would have caused panic. I couldn't talk to my son because he would have phoned his mother. So it was basically you and I who knew I had cancer. The doctors were pushing, obviously, for hospitalization. And I said, not going to happen. Back in 2014, in the dark days of prohibition, it was almost impossible to find genuine, high-quality, what is known as Rick Simpson oil or black tar, which was all we knew back in the day. After a month, bearing in mind that I was given a week that I had to be in hospital, it took me a month to find somebody who could supply the genuine article. And again, I had nobody to consult on dosages, so I found a medical practice. I'm sure mention it in this podcast. They're known as doctors Google, and Google. And we had a lot of consultations at all hours of the morning and night. And the general consensus was 60 milligrams of THC into the system in 90 days, which doesn't sound like a lot until you try 60 milligrams of THC. I won't refer to any previous incidents in our... But
Appreciate that.
It was a lot of experimentation, a lot of days where I literally couldn't stand up because I'd over-ingested. I took 2 weeks off work and just told my family and the staff at work that I'm not available for 2 weeks. My phone is off. Don't even try and contact me. And I was ingesting THC at a rapid rate. I was vaporizing. I was taking capsules. I was using suppositories. Anything I could do to get the medicine into my system. Now, when you've got nobody to talk to, nobody to discuss it with, and on top of it, people are all berating you and telling you that this is the stupidest thing you've ever done, it doesn't bolster one's confidence. You talk to doctors, they're telling you there's no proof that this rubbish actually works, but then ask for the proof that it doesn't work, and you get that cliche, there's no research done. Well, if there's no research done, how can you comment that it doesn't work? Anecdotally, I'd heard of dozens and dozens of people who'd cured various ailments with cannabinoid-based medicines. After a few months, I went back into hospital, and I was told that the tumors hadn't grown, they hadn't shrunk, but they were static. But the bladder had to go. Then I went on a regime every 3 weeks. I had to go in for a scope, which is not pleasant and very expensive. Don't know how National Health are going to cope with that, but that's just an aside, Mike. I was told I needed chemo, which I refused to have. And I just continued my own little regime. And then eventually they admitted that, well, maybe the tumors had sort of shrunk a little bit. Then I was told to have my bladder cauterized, which was a very unpleasant experience because that would kill some of the tumors. After enduring that, I was told, well, it didn't really have that much of an effect. I went on and did a course of 6 weeks of what they call immunotherapy, which was very uncomfortable, very painful, very unpleasant. Something you can equate to. They infuse a liquid into your bladder, and you have to contain that for 2 hours.
Wow.
Something you might be able to refer to. Imagine being told you've got to drink 8 beers, one after the other, and then desist from visiting a toilet for 2 hours. Not pleasant. And then, just to compound the problem, I'm told that when you do go to the toilet, please sit down because you don't want to get the stuff on the inside of your thighs or on your hands. And when you're finished, before you flush, please pour a cup of jik to kill the carcinogens.
Good grief.
Because they don't need to be floating around our water system. So that just gives you some idea of what they're injecting into people. I was told categorically by my original urologist that that hadn't worked either, and the bladder now had to go. To compound the problem even further, They kept telling me that the surgery that they anticipate doing is very painful, and they suggest this new concept called robotic surgery. I won't go into that long, detailed story, but at the end of the consultation I had with a top robotic surgeon, which cost a fair amount of money, just the consultation, I was told that over and above what my medical aid would pay for, my little chip-in would be in the region of 200 to 250,000 rand for the privilege of having robotic surgery.
Good grief.
The benefits were I'd have less scarring, I'd have less pain during the operation, and I'd have no money after the operation. At the age of nearly 65, I think my days of running around Clifton Beach in a little red Speedo were gone, so irrelevant where I had scars. And truth be told, as a biker, scars are a sort of badge of honor. So another couple, just gives you that little bit of extra kudos. But that wasn't to be, because I refused the surgery and continued with my, as some people would say, disgusting regimen of cannabis-based medicine. Until, I'll cut to the chase on this one, it was about 14 months of change of diet, radical difference of lifestyle, cutting out all the things you love, alcohol. Well, I didn't smoke, but smoking is obviously a no-no. All the good foods, red meats, anything sugar-based. A lot of, I won't go into the whole thing, it's a list of 6 pages of different cutouts. But when you're told that it's either literally do or die, you do cut out all the rubbish and you do continue with the healthy stuff. Then after fighting with my original urologist, who insisted on removing my bladder, and he did comment, I might add, that if that SH1T works, I will personally write you up in the medical journals. Well, that SH1T obviously worked, and he didn't. I never got written up in the medical journals. But I think we've got it out to enough people, well, not enough people, but a lot of people, that there is potential for this as a medicine. Subsequent to...
weren't you a guest speaker, if I remember correctly, or you were invited to speak at a conference?
It's an international conference called Cannatech. It traveled around the world at Tel Aviv, Davos in Switzerland, New York. I was fortunate that I was invited to talk at the one in Cape Town, so I didn't have to travel. But there were roughly 500 delegates from around the world. It was a conference more than an exhibition per se. And I was asked to speak there in front of 500-odd top-notch specialists in the field, doctors, scientists, psychologists, you name it. They were involved in the business, people manufacturing huge corporations around the world. I mentioned two, they Canadian-based. I don't want to mention names, I thought maybe not. But they were 2 of the biggest growers of cannabis in the world. Their top echelon were there. So I learnt a lot, as much as I imparted a little bit of knowledge that I'd gleaned.
I really interrupted you. So just going back a bit, the doctor that you were dealing with, he said he wanted to remove what?
My bladder.
Your bladder. Did he
prostate.
Succeed?
No.
Oh, he didn't. Good.
I refused the operation, so I still have
You
my
never
bladder.
had the op. You continued with your, as you say, your regime.
And
cure, and the cure, and how did you monitor? How did you know you were getting better?
well, what I did was I parted company with my original urologist, and I found another urologist who was more amenable to the alternate medication, and we agreed that he would monitor my health. I would do my own medication, and if it got to a stage where he felt I was pushing the envelope beyond reasonable accepted standards, then he would tell me that you've got whatever time and you've got to now think about the op. That was about 14 months later.
What did the op entail, if I may add? What exactly? Remove the bladder?
Mike, I know you
Sounds-
well enough. I don't want to tell you because you probably squirm
I
and
will
have to run
probably-
outside. And
So I assume that with no bladder, then you would go the next step with is it a colostomy bag? Is that correct, or something?
okay,
like that?
fortuitously, at the same time, they came up with a new concept called a neo bladder,
Yeah.
where they remove your original bladder and they replace the original bladder with a bladder built out of your colon.
Good grief.
So now this op entailed going into theatre, having your bladder and other various bits and pieces of manhood removed, not the whole bit, but most of it, and leaving you a hollow shell.
No, thanks, Frank.
And then they're sticking a bit back in there that they've chopped out somewhere else. So now you've got basically two major operations done at the same time. I was told that, I'd be in a lot of discomfort for a good few weeks, if not good few months. And it was, I think, fairly experimental at the time. So I sort of balked at that one. And then...
like you're thinking, thought back to my good old medicines and my regime.
So I kept going every 3 weeks odd for a scope, and they're incredibly unpleasant, the after effects. Going to the toilet is like passing broken glass, razor blades, and a bit of sulfuric acid just to add insult to injury. You're just getting back to normal when you're back in theatre again, and repeat process. Anyway, after about 14 months of strict dieting and whatever, I was told that I now had carcinoma in situ, and it was muscle invasive and aggressive. And I'd now pushed the envelope, and it was now time. So I'd agreed with my my second urologist that what we would do is, if he felt I needed the op and it was imminent, he would support me having a second opinion, which I would advise in any medical thing. And if the second surgeon concurred with the diagnosis, then I would revert to my guy. He was my attending physician. So after I'd been told that I had this carcinoma in situ, he said to me, look, you can play with your meds now for another month, and then it's time for decisions. I went back to my family and to the office, and I said, guys, I'm going to have to up my medication one more time, just give myself the last hope here. So again, I went back to being comatose for nearly a week, just ingesting way too much cannabis. And it was an incident. I had a drink with a friend of mine at a club the night before I went into the hospital to go and investigate whether they could cite this bladder. And I nearly landed up in hospital due to a little incident lifting motorbikes. But I went
That's not on the script, Frank. Move on.
I went back the following day into hospital. A little bit painful, but I made it to the hospital with one arm. Sorry, Mike. And come round from the anaesthetic. They're now investigating whether they can remove everything. And that was, again, I'll never forget, on a Wednesday, which is when he operates. Invariably, I hear from him by Thursday, very latest Friday. Friday came and went, along with half of my nervous system. No word from the doc. Obviously, what goes through your head. I've pushed the envelope. It's now way beyond. He's a nice guy, so he's giving me the weekend to
enjoy before he breaks the bad news.
Exactly. Monday, I don't think I did a day's work. I sat there in trepidation and panic. 7 o'clock, we're about to sit down for dinner, and the phone rings. Hi, Frank, it's the doctor. I said, yeah. He says, you can cancel the op. Well, obviously, blood ran cold. Knees went wobbly. I said to him, oops. Okay, so how much time? And I heard this sort of, what? I said, well, cancelling the op, obviously, push the envelope, so how much time? He said, no, I can guarantee you not more than maybe 30 to 40 years. I said, what? He said, no, you've misinterpreted. He said, we're cancelling the op. because we cannot find cancer. He said, the reason I'm only phoning you today
Wow.
was I've run your tests, the initial one, and I've run them twice more, just to make sure that we hadn't missed something. So I said, does that mean I'm in remission? And if I'm not mistaken, I think he said something along the lines of, remission implies that it's dormant, that it's there, it's waiting for some kind of trauma or incident to, release it. And then it can come back and bite you with a vengeance. He said, in this case, we cannot find traces of it.
Good grief. I'm getting goosebumps here, Frank. I can't believe it. It must have been an incredible moment.
Well, no embarrassment that the three of us sat around the dinner table sobbing.
Yeah.
I think the doctor maybe shed a tear or two.
Yeah.
And that was it. I was now supposedly clear. I do have regular checkups, obviously. And in fact, January, just prior to an overseas visit, I got a blockage in the urethra, and it necessitated an intervention by the doctors. Nothing that the wonderful meds can't cure. So,
and how long ago was this, Frank? Sorry, I'm trying to get a handle on the time curve. This was 5 years ago?
4.
4.
No. What are you referring
the time that when you were diagnosed with cancer?
From the time I was diagnosed to the time I was given clear was
yeah.
just under 2 years.
And that's how many years ago now that we sit in the studio and you've
Well, March 2024 will be exactly 10 years
Wow.
since I was diagnosed.
Wow. And you've maintained your belief in these products and you use them.
Well, not only do I use them, but as you probably know, we started a little operation out of this, purely based on people having heard my story, and then coming back and asking me, where can they obtain the medicine, how do they use it. All I'd obviously investigated was, or researched, was the fact that I had bladder cancer, and I knew how to, well, if I may say, cure bladder cancer, but I'd never researched any of the other cancers. So that became a bit of a mission. And one thing and another, we started a little operation where we were selling cannabis-based medicines on various markets around Cape Town, farmers markets, weekend markets. And people were starting to ask about the potential, and so I started doing more research. I'd met some incredible people at the Cannatech conference, a lot of them out of Israel, which is the epicenter of cannabis research. I work with a doctor in the US. I work with a couple of people out of the UK on researching new treatments
and I would imagine keeping yourself up to date with progress.
And keeping myself alive.
And keeping yourself alive. But so happy to see it seems so very successful. I have to say, this is all a new territory to me, and I'm sure to many of the viewers. So I'm finding this absolutely fascinating. And the one thing I have noticed, though, because when I was 21, well, we're both the same age, it was certainly marijuana was something you bought in the back streets, and it had a very poor reputation. And it has taken a long, long time to get to the stage now where they have stores in New York where you can go in and buy certain cannabis products. I know certainly in California there are shops that sell just about every type of marijuana. They're available in all shapes and styles, both medicinal and otherwise.
Recreational is the term.
They call it recreational. That's the word I was looking for. Thanks. But your little business, well, it's not so little anymore, has grown out of the fact, from what I can deduce here, is that people there's so little information out there. People need to talk or have a one-on-one. And there's no doubt about it. I haven't found a need. And I'm happy to say that I haven't found a need, and I hope I don't. But if I do, I would need to come to somebody like you, because it's all very well talking about Dr. Google, but I'm very scared of Dr. Google. I want to speak to the man, the very man that has benefited, and find out his story, and help me hold my hand, as it were, go down that road. So tell us a little bit about these products, Frank. We're not going to go through all of them, but what are they? Are they? The one thing I'm confused about is you seem to almost it's billed not necessarily through you, but kind of worldwide as a cure for all anxiety, depression, certain cancer disorders. What was the other thing? Heart, glaucoma,
high blood pressure, diabetes.
Diabetes. I mean, it's almost too good. How can one product deal with all these ailments? It doesn't. I find that a little difficult to get my head around. But you're going to tell me differently, and I look forward to hearing what you have to say to that.
Right, just to bring you up to speed and part of your re-education, go back to Ayurvedic times, go to Chinese medicine. Cannabis has been found in Egyptian pharaohs' tombs, along with honey. The honey, just by the way, after X thousand years, in an earthenware jar, was still perfectly edible. So it's just an idea of the natural things that we have on this planet that are ignored as medicines. Honey is an antibacterial. You can use it on an open wound. Have you ever heard of that happening?
No, never.
Why not? Because it's much better to sell elastoplasts and bandages.
An expensive cream. Yeah.
Exactly.
Produced by a pharmaceutical company.
Thank you.
Yeah.
The same with cannabis. It's never been researched, and yet medical professionals are saying there's no evidence, it's rubbish, it's a plant, how can it... Unlike any other plant that I know of on this planet, they've identified at this point in time well in excess of 300 to 400 various components of the cannabis plant. It's broken down into cannabinoids, which is your CBDs, THCs, etc., your terpenes, which give you the effect of cannabis. So you'll get, I'm not going to go into boring detail, but let's take limonene, which is what they call the more upper. So if you ingest cannabis that is limonene, terpene profiled, you'll be more euphoric, energetic, go and paint the Sistine Chapel and run a marathon. Conversely, you get the sort of mycene side of the scale, which is known in the trade as downers. So if you imbibe that, you become more relaxed, sleepy, and then everything in between. So now you think of the potential between all of these cannabinoids and terpenes. Your THC is the one that gives you the so-called stoned high effect. The CBD, which is non-psychoactive. And then they've now come out with CBG. We've got CBG, CBN, CBC, all of which are different aspects of the plant, which do different functions. So to answer your question, by using the different cannabinoids in conjunction with some of the terpenes, it's becoming a science. We've evolved a range of different medications.
So these are all manufactured in a different fashion to deal with a particular... Let's say I struggle to sleep. Then you would have a derivative of the plant manufactured with those properties, and that's what you would sell.
We would, in that case, for sleeping, advocate probably CBD or CBG, unless it's a case of chronic insomnia, where people have been on these terribly disgusting sleeping tablets, which are addictive.
Which is me.
Which have...
I freely admit I'm addicted to them, yeah. And it worries me enormously.
Which astounds me, where you have access to some of the finest product in the country, but yet have this innate ability to disappear when cannabinoids or cannabis is mentioned, albeit a beaver rally or a mic missing in action.
Yeah, so no, I take your point. I put that down to, I suppose, my age and
stupidity.
And also a bit nervous. How do you handle the quality control of these products? Because one of the other concerns that have been expressed by the medical industry is because obviously I think a lot of them are seeing some of their market possibly potentially being taken away, as you rightly point out. Basic things like honey can do so much, but people don't know about it. So, and best that they don't find out about it. But nevertheless, you need to find out how do you quality control these drugs? How do you make sure that you've got the right amount in each pill or whatever method you use to ingest it?
Right. It starts with the growing of the plant. Different strains have different benefits. So we have one qualified agriculturalist with a PhD in these subdivisions of plants who grows our strains for us. They all grown from pheno, so it means it's exactly the same whenever we do a grow. He does an extraction for us. It's then given to a doctor who's a naturopath, not a medical doctor, but who's qualified to work with plant-based meds. And he converts that into our oil, our capsules, our syringes of Rick Simpson oil - black tar, highly effective THC-based cancer control, etc., etc. And we have them lab tested. So we know that what we're doing is correct. Up until possibly a year ago, we were building our brand. We didn't entertain third-party products because we didn't know where they were coming from, where the raw material was grown. It's all more of a science.
That's the thing, exactly, because somebody can go and manufacture this stuff in their home, and there's nobody monitoring and making sure that it's made to the correct
100% in agreement,
or whatever the terminology is. Yeah.
I've done a lot of expos and markets around the country, certainly a lot in Cape Town, and I've bumped into people who are selling CBD-THC products on markets, and I'll stop by and I'll tell them who I am. I'm invariably wearing a T-shirt with our brand on it. And I'll say to the guys, well, hi, it's opposition, but as long as we're getting the meds out to the public, I support anybody who's in this business for the right reasons. The right reasons are health, not profit. And I start asking some questions about who does your extractions. And they look at me and well, I do it at home. Oh, what do you use? Oh, I use this, or I use that, or I boil it in this. And I'm thinking to myself, and you're calling this medicine? But there is no regulatory body. There's no SAPRA that controls this.
You would support that, though?
I would support it 100%.
I want to just, with time in mind, I want to just move on a little bit. We can come back to this, but would you do consultations? You get somebody who comes along who, very much like me, feels the need. But it's not so easy discussing your ailments over the counter in the shop with other people all wandering around. Is there no room for some sort of an not operation, it's the wrong word, a room, a consulting room, pretty much like a doctor has? You would go in and do a consultation. Is that something you guys would do or can do or should be doing?
Well, if you sort of pay attention when you, you don't pop in the shop anymore, so you wouldn't notice, but we have expanded our Plumstead store, and I had an excess of space to put product in. And my son and I hadn't sat down and we thought, well, we have the space. How do we take this to the next level? And we spoke to a friend of ours who does a lot of mushroom-based medicines. And we thought, well, to answer your question, people need somewhere to go and discuss this. They need different modalities of the medical profession that are involved in cannabis-based meds to be available to talk to people. I mean, I have a certain knowledge, but certainly I'm no world-class expert on the product. I like to think so, but a lot of people might disagree. So we've now, from just being Cannablis Pty Limited, we've now evolved into the Healing Centre, which is our Plumstead store. We have 2 consultation rooms.
Oh, you do? Right.
One is fitted out as purely a consultation room. The other one is fitted out with a massage-kinesiology bed. And
a what bed?
Kinesiologist.
A kinesiologist.
Who's one of the panel that now works with another modality that people tend to disregard, which just balances your body and etc. So out of that, we now have on board with us a kinesiologist, a psychologist, a physiotherapist, a registered nurse, a Reiki master, somebody who does Rife treatments, reflexology, and I apologize if I've forgotten anybody. Oh, we have a personal trainer, Mike. I can get you a discount.
Fantastic.
We have a nutritionalist and various other modalities. And those are available. We have a policy. We do not charge for people to use the consultation rooms. It's a service to people who need the service. So they can make an appointment, or if they come to us and they say, I need advice on this, then we put them in touch with our panel. They'll set up a consultation at the rooms, and they take it from there. The charge between the medical professional and the client is between the medical. We get no benefit out of it whatsoever. Hopefully they'll come into our store and they'll use our products, or at least have a cup of coffee with us and spread the word. So it's a service. It's not a profit-generating operation, but it's unusual, and it's. I think
it must be a first in South Africa. I've never heard of
I
such
like
a
to
thing.
think so.
Yeah.
We have a strict policy in our stores, all three of them, that nobody under 21 will be allowed in the store. This is in consultation with SAPS. And we do not allow smoking of any nature in any of our stores. We do not support the coffee shop concept where you go along and you join a club. And I don't have anything against them. It's a wonderful place for people to go and be safe.
The recreational spot, I suppose.
Some people would rather go to a pub and have a beer.
Yeah, exactly.
There are people who would rather go to a club and have a joint.
I just want to touch on just one thing there, again, that interests me. You're talking about research and that. I know in the mists of time somewhere, you mentioned Israel. And I remember that they, in fact, been at one stage, they were almost the only country in the world that was experimenting with the benefits of cannabis. Whatever happened to all that research, and do we have access to it, or has the world overtaken Israel now? Is everybody doing research on it now?
Well, it was all started by Professor Mechudulam out of Jerusalem University. He realized the potential for the plant, and he started investigating the properties. And he was the one who identified all the various components of the plant, cannabinoids, the flavonoids, the terpenes, and all the other minor attributes of the plant, and then started working on what each one does and how it works in conjunction with anything else.
So there is research out there that you can draw from. That's
most
available.
Definitely. Israel has made it available to, as they do with all their technology, to the rest of the world. All the American companies, a lot of the big drug companies are using research that was done by Israel. There is something else where people are talking about purely CBD. Now, back in the early days when we started, we used to have all our oils and capsules were utilizing what they call an isolate. So they've taken the plant with 400 to 500 different components. They've isolated one component, i.e. CBD. And that was touted as a brilliant medicine on its own. Admittedly, it's not bad for pain, minor pain, a bit of anxiety, a bit of stress. But it's certainly not a cure-all that people seem to think it is. And certainly not in isolate format. Now, there's a term that's bandied around a lot called the entourage effect. And people don't understand this, but our body has been hot-wired to work with cannabinoids from the time we crawled out of the sea as slugs and evolved, or Adam and Eve eating apples and we evolved, whatever your belief is. Aliens came down and we grew out of that,
Either
whatever.
Way, whatever it is.
We are hot-wired to work with cannabinoids. And you've heard of the immune system.
Yeah.
Do you know the full medical term for immune system?
No, I do not.
I recommend Dr. Google, and Google. In a nutshell, we are hot-wired to work with it, and they've named it the endocannabinoid immune system. Not us, medical science. Where did the cannabinoid in endocannabinoid come from? Ask any doctor what a CB1, CB2 receptor is. That is built into our system. And at Cannatech, the conference I spoke at, I was talking to one of the professors there, and I was obviously on a learning curve. It was 2019. It's some time ago when you consider the evolvement. And he said, Frank, for a layman, for somebody who scraped through matric at about the fourth attempt, I'm not going to get technical. He says, here it is. You watch movies. I said, yeah, I do. He says, ever watched a movie where it involves a firehouse? I said, well, yeah. And he says, you watch the movie and the firemen are all running around in their civvies and they're watching movies and playing pool and making coffee, and all of a sudden, ding, 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 the little bell goes. They slide down this magic pole, come out on the bottom, all dressed up in their firefighting kit, jump in the little red fire engine, and off they go to fight the fire. He said, keep that scenario in mind and think about your CB1, CB2 receptors. Little guys all running around in civvies, playing pool, making coffee, watching movies, and all of a sudden you ingest some form of cannabis, be it CBD, CBG, CBN, THC, whichever, and the alarm goes off. All the little receptors slide down the magic pole, come out with their fighting gear, and rush off to go and see where the problem is. And they discover a little tumor somewhere, and then direct the meds to that specific point. Very simplified.
Incredible.
But
yeah,
it is. It's there. So the reason I brought up the CB1, CB2 receptors is when you're using cannabis-based meds, using one single component, CBD, CBG, doesn't work too well. You need what they call the entourage effect, where the plant was designed to work synergetically with all the components of the plant. So if you're taking a CBD-based med, it must have a certain amount of THC, maybe not enough to give you the high or get you stoned, but it has to be there for the body to be able to activate all the receptors that one needs to fight the meds, the illnesses.
But not so much that you're going to, go get high.
There's a number of these. I mentioned earlier that we were building a brand for a number of years. We were approached by some pharmaceutical companies who were getting into the business, a few international companies who wanted us to stock their CBD isolate products. And we said, no, we want to build a brand that we can be proud of, number one. And number two, know where it came from, how it evolved into a bottle. And when I say to you, that's what you need, we have full confidence in that specific.
I think it's wonderful, Frank. And you know what? It's South African. It's a South African company. I whinge on this show so much about the fact that we can't even produce a toothpick. But you've got a range of products here, which I think the time will come, we're going to be something of a world leader. But at least we're manufacturing a product that we can sell. What is the position with that? In any effect, is it obviously the laws in different countries, so it's not something you probably export with too much ease, but it is a product that certainly must have benefits overseas.
Well, as you mentioned, the product is gaining huge support basically around the world. And not only the cannabis-based meds, but there's a huge shift now towards psychedelics for things like PTSD, depression, the so-called bipolar.
Is that like magic mushroom?
Magic mushroom, psilocybin.
Yeah.
But within the fungi field, I like to simplify it again into three basic tenets of the mushroom kingdom. One is what I call the pick and pay mushrooms, the little white button mushrooms and the stuff you go and find in a pre-packed box.
Yeah, have with my salad.
And if you're extremely lucky, your wife will chop them up and fry them or whatever, and you might get a meal with them. That's the one aspect of mushrooms. Then you get the medicinal mushrooms, the lion's mane, turkey tails, etc., all of which have superb medical benefits. And then the big daddy, the psilocybin-based so-called magic mushroom. The benefits of microdosing, of 5-gram journeys, are also phenomenal. I know I've done both.
I don't understand what you've done. What did you say? A journey, did you say?
Mike, I'll have to sit down with a beer and explain
It's
it to
time
you.
for another show. But just quickly for...
Okay, so very basically, just take one, lion's mane.
Yes.
It's known internationally as a neurological regenerative.
Yes.
So for people who are running down to 3 or 4 brain cells,
Yes.
lion's mane, highly recommended.
That's me. I'm scared of I've only got 4 left.
Those are only because I've been slipping magic mushrooms into your coffee. So there's phenomenal benefits out of microdosing, where you're taking, for example, 100 milligrams of a psilocybin-based, usually a strain called Golden Teacher, and then using 100 milligram daily dose. There's 2 modalities or 2 regimes where you do 5 days on, 2 days off.
I'm sorry, I need to interrupt you because I don't know. Why would I be doing this?
Anxiety.
Oh, so there's a health reason for this. I'm not just going on a fun trip.
No. You're going to get no trip whatsoever.
Oh, right.
It's like taking a...
Okay. So this is a course that you were going, but the magic mushroom just gives you the impression that
you're going to see pink elephants.
Exactly.
Mike, I can actually attest to the Golden Teachers. A few years ago, I actually was depressed, and I started, but I didn't microdose. I just used like a gram or 2 at a time, and I can tell you, it takes you on a trip. It makes you deal with stuff that you have to deal with. Like my friend said, actually he was our first guest, and he spoke about magic mushrooms and psilocybin, and he said that the psilocybin will make you believe things that isn't real, so you can face it and get over it. But it helped me personally. It helped me.
Wow. Oh, well, there you go. So we have a user right here. So I'm going to make a pledge to you, Frank. I'm going to start on the small scale, and I'm going to try and reject my sleeping tablets. It's a concern to me. I mentioned to my doctor not long ago. I said, look, I don't like taking these sleeping tablets, but they sure as hell work. And one day I went on holiday, I didn't have them, and I literally panicked. And I drove all the way from Claremont back to Cape Town to buy the things because that's where they were. I couldn't get them without prescription. So I want to...
Just interjecting here, Mike, that is known as...
Addiction. No, exactly. I accept that. So when I asked my doctor, he simply shrugged his shoulder and said, that's the way it is. I said, well, is there no natural something I could use that, what about marijuana and stuff like that? He just, again, shrugged his shoulder as if to say, whatever you want, but that you're going to end up taking the tablets. He didn't give me any encouragement whatsoever. So I've never...
Scaletium is another one. Natural plant. Natural relaxant.
Right.
Will help you sleep.
Okay. Frank, it's been a fascinating conversation. There seems to me a lot of questions coming up now that I would like to ask, but there might be time for another show. I think let's let this sink in. Hey, Nantel, I think that we're going to just get it out there and let people find out a little bit more about it. I certainly know that the ignorance in this product is massive. And the only people that seem to know more about it are those that have benefited from it, but they've only found out about it because they had to. And I think it would be nice, and I'm thinking people now, like myself, are starting to learn the benefits of the product and what is there. Because if you don't know it's there, you're not going to use it. I love the idea of your consultation. I think that just sounds absolutely fantastic. And there's nothing worse than going into a shop and you're trying to tell your problem to somebody and everybody else can hear. So I think it's really advanced that you're going to have these little consulting rooms and give people an opportunity to relax and tell them what they need and where their problems lie. So, viewers, that is Cannabis. It's a product now that's been on the market for, I think, 15 years, Frank, as long as that? I seem to remember when you launched it.
Well, we've been going with our basic product range since 2015.
Wow,
When
2015.
we launched our first
Yeah.
little isolate bottles.
Right. I remember.
Fortunately, we didn't have that going for too long until we evolved into what they call full extract cannabis oil that contains everything that the plant grows with is in the bottle. And that is essential for proper endocannabinoid activation medicines. It has to be full spectrum, at very worst broad spectrum, which is similar to full spectrum but with less THC. In a nutshell, layman's terms.
Thank you, Frank. I hope everybody listening and watching will be making notes. It seems to me I would need some consultation privately to fully grasp what this product can do for me. But Cannabis is there. The store has certainly expanded. I think their major flag shop is in Plumstead. On Plumstead Main Road, very easy to find. And I know that you've opened a store in Vineyard Road in Claremont. And you also now opened at Noordhoek, is that correct?
The Red Herring Trading Post, Noordhoek.
Red Herring Trading Post in Noordhoek is also available.
With a brewery right next door.
There you go. So you've got the best of both worlds. So if you have any questions or you would like to know more about the products at Cannabis, take the time to go through to their store in Plumstead or any of their shops. You can find them on the web. They've got a very helpful, usable website. I highly recommend it, and that will also give you a lot of information if you want to do a little research before you make use of any of the cannabis products. So viewers, that's me done. I want to thank you all very much for giving me your time and taking the trouble. I hope that in return we've helped clear the air and some of the mystery surrounding cannabis as a medical drug or as a medical product. I want to ask you also, please do give us the thumbs up. Don't forget to subscribe, really very important. And just keep one thing in mind. You might not agree with everything that I say in this show, and you might not agree with any of it. But I will hope that you'll support the right for me to say it, because the one beauty of this show and Cape Conscious Media is what you're doing by supporting the show is supporting the right and the freedom for people to say and speak their mind. So thanks very much again for that. Don't forget, we've got registration week coming up soon. And so there's an opportunity for you to register to vote. I think it's in about 2 weeks' time, but keep an eye on the press. The posters will be going up soon as well. Most important that you do register to vote in the election next year. And then again, till our next broadcast, please do take care.